There's little attempt to hide the objective. He's running on Labour's ticket, but running against Labour's leader, who's in the humiliating position of having to back his assailant.
A vote for me will be a vote to change Labour, because Labour needs to change.
Whoever the Labour candidate is, I'll be 100% behind them. I want the whole of the party, the whole of the movement to come together. Whatever views people may have on the direction of the party, that needs to be put to one side.
We're in a situation now where the Labour Party machine will be pumping all its efforts into getting a man elected in order to bring down the party's leader. This is an extraordinary situation, isn't it?
It is contradictory and surreal and unprecedented and bizarre. Any sort of set of adjectives you can think of. It's a very strange thing to go and knock on somebody's door and say, will you vote Labour? And they say, but I want to support the Labour government. What does one say?
Mr Streeting, why aren't you today pulling the trigger on a leadership election?
Wes Streeting's pledge at the weekend that he wanted Britain to go back into the EU meant Andy Burnham was put on the spot and asked if he still supported that too.
Has Wes Streeting made life more difficult?
Not doing anything on the way, yeah.
Having backed it as recently as last autumn. Inside at the investment conference in Leeds, Andy Burnham pulled back from repeating what would have been a voter repellent for some in the pro-Brexit seat he's now running in.
My view is that Brexit has been damaging, but I also believe the last thing we should do right now is rerun those arguments.
I think Wes Streeting is clearly putting it on the agenda because it is popular with more than half of Labour Party members, particularly those based in London.
Do you think he's also trying to sabotage Andy Burnham?
I think it amounts to the same thing.
In Makerfield, which voted strongly for Brexit in the referendum, Reform UK were trying to paint Andy Burnham as someone who would reverse it.
They are arrogantly ignoring, sticking two fingers up to the good voters here in Makerfield who voted about 65% to leave the EU.
Some in Labour are worried the Makerfield by-election has the potential to convulse not just our politics but our economics too, if gilt markets don't like what could flow from the result.
This is a really difficult, dangerous moment for the Labour Party. The worst thing that could happen is if Rachel Reeves was replaced with a Chancellor that the bond markets had no confidence in, and what happened to Liz Truss happens to Labour. I think that would be an existential crisis for the Labour Party, and we can't risk that for the country.
We got that again.
In the last couple of hours, Andy Burnham's team has tried to reassure markets that he would not change Rachel Reeves' existing fiscal rules, despite floating such ideas quite recently. Scrutiny will now turn to his plans to raise taxes and his promise to reform major utilities and infrastructure. What do you think Andy Burnham means by public control of energy, housing, water, transport?
We don't know yet. I don't think we know what it means.
Pretty giant void.
It is a pretty giant void.
If Andy Burnham's talking about public control, meaning tough regulation, it's not actually a million miles from where we are. If he's talking about public ownership, it is a long way from where we are and it's very expensive. If it's not public ownership, how different would it be?
I don't know until we've seen what the proposals are. Public ownership, nationalisation, would be very expensive.
The challenge for Andy Burnham's team is to avoid triggering a market fright while also avoiding any claim that his regime change might change very little and he could risk looking like continuity Keir.
How are you all doing?
Good, doing well. How are you?
Good. All the better for seeing you.
Preferable to some of the cabinet, maybe. The Prime Minister, meeting small business owners in London today, signalled he would not be standing down ahead of the by-election or after it if Andy Burnham won the seat.
Is your premiership now over?
No, we've got a lot of work to do, and I was addressing Labour Party staff actually this morning, reminding them and reminding the whole team really that we were elected into office by millions of people to bring about change in this country.
8 days ago you said you will fight the next election and serve a full second term. Is that still the case?
I do want to fight the next election. I've said I don't know how many times that I'm not going to walk away. I feel very strongly that I must serve the people who voted voted me into office. The orders are coming in.
Keir Starmer's team are insisting the by-election about to get formally underway is not a referendum on his leadership. Some of his critics agree and say that happened in the elections 10 days ago.
Strong please, boss, yeah.
This contest is a high-stakes test of Andy Burnham's policies and appeal. You heard Keir Starmer there saying that he'd been talking to Labour Party staff today. He went to Labour headquarters and effectively, this is just too bizarre really, you can't quite believe you're saying this, he stood there and he told them all, as the Labour leader, he told these Labour workers, effectively his supporters, his workers, you must throw yourselves into trying to help this man who wants to dislodge me from my job. Another surreal element of this whole by-election, there's Andy Burnham, not yet fully in place, the by-election not formally underway, but he's already talking about his Makerfield manifesto. Well, by-election candidates normally put out leaflets, quite often with nice pictures of the candidate with the leader. But no, he's issuing a manifesto. And another extraordinary thing about this entire event is this sort of re-engineering in flight of the Burnham agenda. We had known that he was interested in revising some of the fiscal rules. In words given to Bloomberg today, he seems to be pulling away from that. We knew about the PLP and the electorate of Makerfield being involved in this extraordinary moment. We now know that the gilt markets are in there as well. There are, as it were, three people in this extraordinary political marriage.
Thanks, Gary. Well, a little earlier, I spoke to Sam Rushworth, the Labour MP for Bishop Auckland, whose seat, like Makerfield, backed Brexit. He was joined by Gawain Towler, who used to advise Nigel Farage and is now on the governing board of Reform UK. I began by asking Sam Rushworth whether Brexit would play a role in the upcoming by-election.
Well, I hope not. I just can't actually see a world in which we could credibly rejoin. You'd end up being a sort of swing country where every time there's an election, we'd be sort of having parties saying, let's go in, let's go out, let's go in again. Europe doesn't want that. We don't want that.
Gawain Towler, is Brexit re-emerging in this contest a gift for your side?
I would say it's certainly not unhelpful. I heard criticism that Reform did well in the councils only where there were Leave constituencies. Well, seeing as there were over 400 of those, this cannot do us much harm. It isn't the key issue in this election. But I think if Mr Burnham is the candidate, and we don't know that yet, but if he is using Makerfield as a place on which to launch his assassination of the Prime Minister.
That is true, isn't it, Sam Rushworth, that if people vote for Andy Burnham, they're really voting for him to get rid of Keir Starmer?
No, I don't think that's true. I think that when people have difficulties, they want to know that their Member of Parliament is in touch with them, is listening to them, is going to hold surgeries. You know, they don't want sort of another Nigel Farage, who famously said that he couldn't hold surgeries in Clacton because of security, and now tells us that that's the reason for a £5 million gift was to pay for his security.
But Andy Burnham specifically wants to become Prime Minister. He won't be in the constituency, he'll be in number 10. He won't be able to be a local MP. He's using Makerfield to get elected, to launch a putsch against his Prime Minister. The election by-election should be on the record of the Labour Party of the last 2 years.
Sam Rushworth?
Yeah, I mean, look, if it's on the record of this government, then I have to say we've had some fantastic economic news in the last few days. Just today, the IMF has upgraded our growth rating. We've got the fastest growth in the G7. We've got falling NHS waiting lists.
But the evidence from last week would be you better not just fight on your record, because it didn't impress people.
Well, we all know from the local election results that there was a lot of people stayed at home. A lot of people feel that the pace of change is too
voted Reform.
Slow. Yeah, there were people who voted Reform, and I represent an area where Reform have been in power for 12 months. And let me tell you, once Reform gets into power, it doesn't take too long before people start to regret it. And that's what we're already seeing on the doorsteps in Durham. It's why we took a seat back from Reform in a by-election. just a few months after they won it, because wherever they take power, what ends up happening is chaos and resignations. Well, I'm sorry, it's not low taxes. There's many places where Reform have been putting up tax, actually.
Set its tax up the lowest in the country, yes?
They promised us Doge teams that would come into Durham and sort everything out, and all we actually got was cuts.
You had the lowest
including the poorest people in Durham. The poorest people in Durham actually got the biggest increase in their council tax. So people aren't happy, and that's why we took a seat back in a by-election. And that's, I think, what people in Makerfield are going to have to weigh up. Do they want to have a Labour MP who's going to share their values and care about them? Because I'll tell you who doesn't share their values. I don't think the crypto Thai-based billionaire who gave Mr Farage this gift of £5 million is really got the people of Makerfield at heart.
Well,
I really don't think he does.
Somebody who wants to use Makerfield just to be Prime Minister's got their interests at heart. He's got his interests at heart. And that's sadly the case.
Just going, Tyler, can I just ask you, I mean, you know, we're talking a little bit about chaos in the Labour Party, but there's a bit of chaos in your party as well today, isn't there, over the party chairman, who has been mysteriously replaced. David Bull's no longer the party chairman, and Lee Anderson is. I mean, do you know what's gone on?
Well, yes. I mean, Lee Anderson and Nigel felt that it was a little bit south-heavy in our makeup at the top table, and we thought it was important to have somebody who can speak more authentically to the sort of people in Makerfield that we would like to vote for us now.
You know, that's an interesting place for Lee Anderson, because he was, of course, famously the chairman of the Conservative Party. And I do wonder if that's not also a risk for Reform, that this starts to catch on, that people realise that the Home Secretary who gave us the small boats crisis, the Immigration Minister who gave us the asylum hotels, and the former Conservative chairperson are now all Reform Party MPs. I don't think the people of Makerfield want Conservatives Mark II, frankly.
Sam Rushworth, also, just finally for you as well on change. I mean, Andy Burnham, you know, keeps saying everything's got to change, but in the last day, he has, it seems, sort of changed his position on Brexit. He now doesn't want to put that back, and he's now also today said that he doesn't want to change the fiscal rules. You know, having previously suggested that maybe defence could be taken out and there could be tweaks and we shouldn't be a hock to the bond markets. Now he's having to say, no, there won't be any changes to the fiscal rules. Change is harder in practice than it is in theory, isn't it?
Yeah, look, governing's really difficult. And, you know, and this is what I say to any would-be leadership challenger in my party, is that whoever is Prime Minister is still going to have to pay off the COVID debt. They're still going to have to fix broken public services. You know, so change is difficult, but I think actually Mr Burnham's right in saying that we should keep to those fiscal rules, because it's those fiscal rules that's delivered the stability that's helping us weather the storm of the Iran conflict, and that's given us the growth figures that we've seen this week.
Sam Rushworth, Gawain Taylor, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.